what my project is we have to do an interview we have to interview somebody who's been in a thing and in like a hurricane. And my mom talked to you and she said, you've been in a hurricane.
I have been through a hurricane. And you know what? It was Hurricane Andrew, and it was in 1992, late August. The exact date we'll have to look up. Okay? So we do that. But I know it's 1992 because I was 9 months pregnant with my son, David. So it was 21 years ago, and that's when he was born. So because I was pregnant, they made me go to the hospital because and you'll have to research why this happens, the air pressure changes, and sometimes that makes women go into labor. So the doctor wanted me to be safe, so I had to go to the hospital. Okay? So we had just moved into this house. I'm going to show you pictures of the house. Okay? And the houses down in Florida are made a lot different than they are up here. Okay? So that's all brick, and it's one level. All right? And the air conditioning units sit up on top of the house. I don't know if we have a stand or anything. All right? And in order to protect the windows, you have what we call hurricane shutters.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So just to let you know, we had just moved into this house. So my husband was out of town.
Why do they have air conditioning?
On the top? Because that's where they put them. Because our roofs were flat. So to save space, they put the air conditioning units on top.
Cool.
And then it went right to the vents, because most of the vents are up top. We didn't need furnaces. I didn't have a basement. So there's no basements in most of the houses in Florida. But they have a lot of hurricanes there. You would think that would be good. But they just didn't make the basements. Because the land is so soft way down deep. Okay? So what you do is you get shutters on your windows. They look like, these are just metal shutters that we had to connect, and they would cover the windows to protect them from, why do you think it was, why would we have to put,
shatter.
Exactly, from flying stuff that they wouldn't shatter, okay? So we had just moved into this house. My husband was out of town, and my parents came down. They always came down to help me with when I had my babies, my babies were born. So I had my 2 daughters. Anna was 6 and Jessica was 4, and so they came down, and we had a dog named Bear. He was a big black dog named Bear, because bear is oso in Spanish, and it stands for, he was Black Bear, so we called him oso, and we changed it to Bear. But anyway, so my dad and I was 9 months pregnant, so we had to dig in our bushes and connect the shutters on the back, on each window. We put them on. I was on the ladder. My husband wasn't home. So anyway, we got the house all prepped. My parents got there. We went to the grocery store. It was Sunday morning, about 10 o'clock. And you would think they were giving things away. Free. It was so packed. Why do you think it was so packed?
Because people need food.
They were stocking up on supplies. There was no bread on the shelves, hardly any water. All the canned goods were gone. The milk. I went to bed with my kids, so I wasn't watching the news and things. So I was a little behind the 8 ball, as they said. Okay. So when my parents got there, my mom would go to the grocery store, so there's not much water. And then my mom says, okay. My mom lived in Gulf Shores, Alabama, my mom and dad. They'd been through some hurricanes themselves, so she knew what to do. This was the first drill that I had in Miami. And she says, okay, we got to fill the bathtub with water. I said, why do we need to fill the bathtub with water? Why do you think we need to fill the bathtub with water? Are we taking baths? Well, I'll tell you what we did. You know how sometimes after the hurricane, do you know what happens?
The water gets on.
Well, the water, but more so, everything's run by electricity. The electricity in the house and the toilets don't flush, so the water, you can flush it, but it won't fill back up because it's electric. Have you ever thought about that? And also, you had your clean water. You had to bleach, if you needed water, you had clean water. You had to bleach the bathtub first. So there was 2 reasons for the water in the bathtub.
Because it's drinking water.
If you needed some kind of, I don't know if drinking water, but some kind of, a little bit of fresh water, you had it. And also to put in the toilet after you went to potty so you could flush it. Two different things. You ever think about that kind of stuff?
No.
So, hurricane's coming. I'm at the hospital.
That's kind of funny.
On the floor in this big auditorium with all kinds of women. I don't know. They told all the women in the area to come to the hospital just in case. Some of them brought their families, some brought their friends, and their husbands and their little kids. Okay, so it was not. I wasn't having a good time. I wasn't in the bed, or I was sitting on the floor. Okay.
That's not.
So the hurricane did hit. It didn't hit my area. That it did some damage, but it hit about 15 miles south of us, where my brother-in-law and sister-in-law were, and their house was totally damaged. The roof was blown off. Okay, they spent about 4 weeks in a hotel while they repaired their house, and they were lucky because they knew people that could repair it. So if you think about that, many houses in their neighborhood were damaged. There's only so many people that can repair houses, and so much material. So when the hurricane hit in the middle of the night, I think it was about 3 o'clock. We'll have to get the details. The electricity went out in this hospital. I'm in a big auditorium, and it's all dark, okay? And then the generator kicked on, the emergency lights. You know what a generator is? So we did have a little bit of power, but we didn't have a whole lot for the flushing of the toilets, which is a big thing if you're pregnant and you need to get the potty a lot. And so there's all these pregnant women, so the toilets were going. So when it was all over, the hospital told us we really shouldn't leave yet because there were power lines down in the roads, and that would be dangerous. So I waited as long as I could. Then I told my husband to come get me. I needed to be out of that hospital. I needed to be home. So when I got home, everybody was fine. Okay, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law came with their dog. We had our dog in the house. This is some of the pictures. This is what my house looked like when we first moved in. This is a picture of the same place, and you can see a little bit. So notice what's a little bit different about. Okay, so this is, let me look, I'm going upside down. Okay, so this is this tree here. Okay, and then that's that tree. So what do you see that's different?
That tree, it's like all like damaged and stuff, and like the limbs were like thrown off, and there's less leaves, and the leaves are
and
like
do you
all
see how,
over
so which direction do you think this hurricane came for our house? Look
This
at,
way.
yeah. Okay, and I'm going to show you this too. This is another picture straight on. Okay, so this is showing this front porch a little bit closer, but you can see it just looks like all the leaves and everything around. This branch, and I thought I had a picture of it actually in the house. This branch fell from this tree, and it was blocking the path. What was interesting was the branch split around the light post, so it didn't damage the light post. It fell, and the light post was here, and the branches went this way and that way. Weren't we lucky?
That's funny.
We were very lucky. We were very lucky, and we had something that blew off in the back, but we didn't have a whole lot of damage ourselves.
That's lucky.
But we had no electricity.
Oh.
And it is Miami in late August feels like recess did today. How hot was it at recess today? 90 degrees.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Will's 9 months pregnant, so I weighed a lot more. It was very, very hot. Very hot. Very hot. No air conditioning.
Oh.
We had no electricity. So we couldn't,
It still looks like in the picture.
we didn't have lights.
Oh no.
Okay, so tell me. But the one thing I had that other people didn't have, I had a gas stove.
A gas stove.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
So I could still use my stove to cook. Well, and that's not the electricity, exactly.
Because
exactly.
if everything in your house was underground, if it was all grass.
But the water is pumped into your house by electrical pumps and things, so you couldn't use the water. My refrigerator, everything in my refrigerator, what's happening to everything in my refrigerator? It is 90 degrees out. It's hot. What do you want when it's hot?
Water.
Nice cold water, right? So let me show you a couple other things, and I wish I had the better. But this right across the street from me was the school that I taught at. It's called St. Rosa Blima.
They live right across.
Like looking out my front door, I looked at this.
Is that the branch?
This is a tree.
That's a tree that fell.
That's the tree that and trees. And I wish I had a bigger. And this shows you this is a tree laying down. This is the front end of the tree. Okay, that's the tree coming out. But there was a tree that was probably about as round as this table, and it had toppled over. So the roots were all up, and you could have, it was like as bigger than I am, probably about 8 feet across, circular. When the wind had taken that down.
What category was the hurricane?
I want to say it was a category, I want to say 4, but we have to look those up because it's been 21 years, so we'll look that up. It was Hurricane Andrew, because we giggled because my son, they said you should have named him Andrew. He did not come until a week later. Okay, so it was actually, I think, 2 weeks later. But what happened was, because of all the damage to the school and all around, they had to postpone the beginning of the school year. How do you think about that? That's probably the only good thing that happened with the hurricane. But I had cousins that lived in Fort Lauderdale, which was about a half hour north of me, that came down to visit us, to help us. What do you think they brought us that we just were delighted to have? Water and ice. They brought a cooler of water and a cooler of ice. And we were without electricity for about 3 days. And we were lucky. There was people that were without electricity for a lot longer than that. And we were lucky in the fact that we also had the gas that we could use. Some people didn't have gas stoves. They had electric stoves, so they couldn't use their stove at all. Okay? So it was frightening. I didn't hear any of the noises because I was in an auditorium inside. But in my house, we had no basement. Okay, let me show you how this house kind of works. Over here was kind of just a step down, but it was still above ground, but it was a little lower than anywhere else. And we had the screens, the hurricane shutters to go over it. Exactly, there you go. There's the picture. See, they're still up. I'm so glad you noticed that. But we didn't have it for some windows in the back. So what do you think we did? Because those were newer. That was added. That part of the house was added on. They covered it because that back place was all windows. So they had to nail up plywood to cover the windows.
Plywood?
Yeah, like big pieces of wood. I had a lot of family down in Miami. Then one family that came and stayed with us, they lived over on the beach. So they thought it would be safer to come with us. So they did. And they didn't have plywood. So you know what they did?
What?
They took the closet doors off because they were wood. And they used those, because you know how you can take the pin out of the doors? And they used those to protect their windows like storm shutters. They were very creative. They had lived in New Orleans, so they knew a little bit about hurricanes and things like that. So, what else can I tell you about? So I didn't hear the noise, but everybody in my house heard the noise, the wind and all that. But I didn't hear it because I was inside. I was more enclosed in the auditorium within the building. So I was probably a little bit safer than my family was at that point. So what other questions? What else do you need to interview me about besides?
I think I have it all, but do you mind if I go down to your office and scan these?
That would be fine. You know how to do that? Or do you
Yep.
need me to do that?
I
Okay.
think I know how to do that.
I can even do it at home and scan it. Or can you take pictures of them? Will that work?
Probably.
Hey, I have something on my phone that's an app that my daughter said that scans.
Oh, that's from the QR.
No, it's something else.